Okay, what's up, guys? I'll try making a video. It's been a long time. I also have not been following the Celtics too closely, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. But yeah, Celtics max out, super max out, Jaylen Brown. Um, Obviously, right now he's not worth it. Can he be worth it someday? You know, my first impression of the contract was huge mistake. Because basically, if they don't win it this year and there's still the same dysfunction, right? The biggest takeaway that media and fans refuse to deal with is remember when the Celtics were down 0-3 to the Heat, down 3-0, and the rumors come out, these guys are just sick of pretending that they like each other. And that's something that just all these cucked out Celtics fans and reporters, who are the biggest cucks of all, refuse to deal with. Right? So Marcus Smart goes, everyone's crying and moaning, and it's just like Kyrie left. It's even worse than when Kyrie left. Like, oh, Kyrie didn't want to re-sign with the Supermax. Oh, Kyrie would have just figured it out. So I don't want to get off of Jaylen Brown too much, but Marcus Smart and Kyrie, there's huge similarities, almost identical, except for skill set. Remember, everyone was trying to pretend that Kyrie was a leader, and that nobody could beat us in the playoffs, or whatever he said. Like, when he had no intention of even trying to win in the playoffs. So Marcus Smart, all these fans never realized that nobody was actually ever following Marcus Smart, right? It's like calling Grant Williams a leader. Like, nobody was following Grant Williams either. So unfortunately, there's a lot of similarities between Jaylen Brown and Kyrie as well. It's almost carbon copy. So with Marcus Smart, there was zero sacrifice. Zero. Never checked his shot selection. Always had to take the big shot. And they were always playing us 4-on-5, daring Marcus Smart to shoot all the time. Nobody was following him. The team was sick of pretending that they like each other. Down 3-0. If they hadn't gone down 3-0, if it was merely 2-1, they probably would have pulled that off. And I believe it was the same shit against the Hawks or some other team earlier in the playoffs, and the 76ers. Just kicking and screaming because they just didn't like each other, right? So, losing to the Heat, going down 3-0, losing in 7, totally out of gas. It's because you went to 7 games that series and the series before or something, series before that, nobody's thinking about that, right? And so when Jaylen Brown suddenly forgot how to dribble extra in the playoffs, nobody's connecting it to, they're just saying he just doesn't know how to dribble. No, that's not true. That's just not true. It was the emotional circumstances and his mental state. That's what made him forget how to dribble, guys. And nobody's dealing with the fact that Jaylen is obviously jealous, pathologically jealous of Jason Tatum. Why would nobody want to deal with that obvious fact? You don't. Jaylen Brown being you're just not thinking straight. Which is probably why you've been watching the Celtics every game for the past 3-4 years, when it's been torture for regular, normal fans. You know, the ratings were the highest when it was Terry Rozier. And that team was so awesome. And let Rozier go and try to re-sign Kyrie and bring Kemba Walker in because Terry Rozier wasn't happy losing on purpose in the playoffs. Because Terry didn't want to lose on purpose like Kyrie did. You also got to remember that series against the Bucks where Kyrie lost on purpose. It was Marcus Smart right there with him, coming back from some injury, and he's taking like 11 threes in the playoffs in the second round against the Bucks, and he's going like 2 for 11 right there with Kyrie, and then he defends Kyrie. It was like, you guys are so fucking stupid. You know who I'm talking about. I'm not talking about everybody. So I was pretty much all set to bandwagon back on the Celtics with the Porzingis signing, some semblance of normality. And no, so part of the beta personality, guys, is afraid of confrontation, but also afraid of like grappling with reality that you don't wish to be true. So it all comes down to wishing and hoping. Okay? Wishing and hoping that now that Jaylen got paid, that he's not going to demand a trade in 1 year with a trade kicker and totally fuck the Celtics in the ass, right? Wishing and hoping that Jason Tatum isn't going to do the same, whether or not Jaylen Brown demands a trade next year or not. Wishing and hoping that everyone was just going to start following Marcus Smart as much as you did. So what's the wishing and hoping now? Oh yeah, the other wishing and hoping for this next coming year is wishing and hoping that Tatum is magically going to turn into some kind of leader. So we're hoping that Jaylen Brown is suddenly not going to be a jealous, bitter, envious, ungrateful, vindictive brother. And that Tatum is suddenly going to no longer be a passive, quiet, standoffish, antisocial with his teammates. Right? Alpha male. And so there's a common thread here, and it's extremely controversial. You look at the Denver Nuggets, who just won. All 5 of their top scorers were raised by white mothers. And then you look at the difference between like Giannis and these African American brothers. Like Giannis was not raised by an African American mother. Same with Joel Embiid, although he has some of those tendencies you see as well, right? So Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, who's gone, Kyrie, no, not Kyrie. So in the beta Brad, like beta Wick, these guys aren't going to think about any kind of hard truth like that. And so you have a bunch of players on this team raised by African American mothers, most of whom were single, divorced, whatever. Jaylen and Jason included. And you have these moms in their ears. What do you think Jaylen Brown's mom is telling him? And then even Kyrie, like, yeah, he was raised by his dad, but his dad was raised by a single black mom in the project, so it's the same thing. Kyrie's dad was telling Kyrie how to fuck the Celtics over as bad as possible. Let's make a McDonald's commercial or whatever it is in the garden and pretend we're going to come back here using the Dennis system. And then totally fuck this team over and intentionally kill them in the playoffs when they practically went to the finals the year before without you. That'll show them. Right? No sense of obligation. You think Jaylen Brown has any kind of obligation at all? You think he has any kind of gratitude towards that $300 million? You think he's not planning some kind of revenge right here? You don't think his agent, who's without even looking probably some brother raised by a single mother from another brothers single mother, what do you think Jaylen's agent was telling him? And Jaylen was thinking, okay, go to Boston, do some stupid charity events in front of the cameras. That'll get all the beta cucks jerking their tears about what a pillar of the community you are. Only help out the black kids, of course. And then that'll put the public pressure on Beta Brad and Beta Wick to give you everything you want, including a trade kicker, because they have no spines whatsoever, and they view the world through avoiding confrontation. And wishing and hoping for imaginary things that never had any chance of happening. I mean, the good news is, like, on paper, the Celtics are probably the championship favorites this year, but Marcus Smart is gone, and that's a huge addition by subtraction. Just like Kyrie Irving, who actually had, fairly decent plus minus, like his cumulative effect on the team was just absolutely toxic and cancerous. And it was the same thing with Marcus Smart, who you never noticed, but nobody was ever following him. How can someone be a heart and soul when nobody's following them, when they're just a big loudmouth who's never willing to sacrifice anything because they'll throw a temper tantrum? It was the same thing with Bill Russell, ultimately. Guy who shot like 40% from the free throw line and averaged like 12 points a game and tricks people into thinking he's some kind of GOAT when he played with nothing but Hall of Famers and gave them zero credit. Just like Marcus Smart winning Defensive Player of the Year because he campaigned for it and he wasn't even one of the top 2 defenders on his own team. Robert Williams and Jason Tatum were both better that year defensively. So, and another thing is people, these beta types, being afraid to think highly of Porzingis, right? Being afraid to think like maybe we don't need Jaylen Brown as much. I mean, the guy, Porzingis, averaged 23 points a game on crazy efficiency, way higher efficiencies than Jaylen Brown. And you're going to pretend that that Porzingis is only a number 3 option? And you're going to ignore that Jalen Brunson was also kept in the shadow under Luka, which made Jalen Brunson look like a gross overpay by the Knicks when now it looks like a gross underpay or something? And you're not going to give Porzingis the same benefit of the doubt? So, there were not amazing trade options, but if you're going to drag the guy through trade rumors every single year, it's weird. The same people who wanted to drag Jaylen through the trade rumors every single year are the same people cheering that we just paid this guy $300 million when he clearly hates Boston. When he clearly, wants to demand a trade and sabotage us in the playoffs again like he did last year. And remember, all season long last year, Jaylen Brown kept talking about how clutch he was in the playoffs, right? With that jealous personality and competitive with Jason Tatum. But, he was saying, I'm more clutch in the playoffs than Jason Tatum. Look how I did in the finals last year against the Warriors, right? So he had all this pressure on himself and all this all-consuming pathological jealousy of Jason Tatum. That's not how you get to the finals, and that's not how you win championships. So it's just like everybody who wanted to. It's just like all the Kyrie fans. He walked away from the team when we were up 2-0 in the Eastern Conference Finals against LeBron in 2018 when Terry Rozier was the point guard and Jason Tatum was a rookie, and everyone wanted to bring him back and didn't think that was a bad sign. And then he sabotaged us in the playoffs again the next year on the court, insisting he defend Giannis, taking every bad shot, not caring that he was 2 for 23, that he wouldn't do that again. And then he goes 1 for 27. And then you wanted to still bring him back for 5 more years. And you wanted to trade Jaylen and or Jason for Anthony Davis or somebody else just so that Kyrie would come back and sabotage you in the playoffs again. Like, part of the reason we're not winning rings, I think, is the fans. The fans are retarded. The ones who still watch it. So I'm still going to watch because of Porzingis for a little bit, but you know, the pouting and the moaning and the complaining to the refs and the not getting back on defense, and that all comes from the African American single mothers. And right now, Jaylen and his mother and his agent are painting their fingernails, and they're celebrating, and they're going to buy new Gucci purses in Milan, Italy, and pretend that they built Italy or some shit. And then they're going to plot how they're going to fuck over the Celtics, demand a trade. And now that we're in the turbo tax, you can only trade Jaylen Brown for equal contract. So we're going to end up having to take the worst contract in the league next year, whatever contract that is. And then there's going to be a trade kicker on top of it. And bringing Jaylen back won't be an option because he's demanded a trade and sabotaged us in the playoffs yet again. All with Jaylen Brown's mother in his ear, whispering that he's better than Jason Tatum, and you know, you got your cash and now you can absolutely screw them over the most, and that'll show them, and you'll still get out of there and get your own team. Go 22-60 the next year, but you'll score 28, so you'll be super happy about that. So Jaylen didn't just forget how to play. It's because he was totally mentally not in the games because he was consumed with pathological jealousy. And he had all this pressure on himself, and he wasn't playing to beat the Heat or any of those other teams. He was playing to outplay Jason Tatum. And, you know, we even saw this with Steph Curry. So even Steph Curry not immune from this. Although a much more toned down. Remember, it was him and KD, and in the finals, they were playing to beat each other for finals MVP, right? And so when Kevin Durant would have a huge game, 45 points in the playoffs, and the Warriors win, like the shot showing the Warriors going back to the locker room, and Steph Curry's got his head down, and Iguodala or somebody's got his arm around him, trying to console him because he didn't outplay KD in that game, and he probably wasn't going to win finals MVP. Like, that's what we're dealing with here. And you can think about some of the genetic factors that go along with the cultural AA single mothers. But, like sub-Saharan Africa, competitive hunter-gatherer. That's how you survive, and that's how you avoid. These guys are supreme competitive hunter-gatherers. Right? Just like just like the Eskimos, evolved to be probably extremely empathetic and easygoing and thinking with foresight and able to survive in an igloo with other people without getting killed or killing people. That's how they survived extreme evolutionary pressures. The evolutionary pressures in sub-Saharan Africa, guys. And, tropical climates everywhere on Earth. Competitive hunter-gathering. So you've got these guys competing for the stats, competing for the accolades, competing for fan favorite. Like, even Michael Jordan had to get some kind of PhD in listening to Phil Jackson. Try to explain to him why it might be better for the team, even though it's a huge sacrifice for Jordan, not to shoot the ball every single goddamn time. Jordan wasn't trying to hear that. So you think Jaylen Brown is trying to hear that what we really need from him this year is to be a really good 3-and-D guy who can occasionally go one-on-one? And to keep his head in the game and so that he can focus on defense and so that his ball handling doesn't fall apart? And his three-point shooting percentage will go back up to 37, 38, maybe even up to 40. And it's not just him, it's Jason Tatum too. You think Jason Tatum is trying to lose field goal attempts and first team All-NBA accolades? You think Tatum would rather win a championship or win a championship and get second team All-NBA, or lose in the playoffs again but make first team All-NBA? Like, I think the answer might be more complicated than you think. And Tatum's got his mother in his ear, and he's got this weird sort of marriage codependency with his mother, who basically seems to have broken up Tatum and the mother of his child so that she could be the mother, not caring that little deuce would no longer have the mother around, telling Tatum that he can do better and that the grandmother can be the mother. And I think that's why Tatum and Markelle Fultz got along like best friends when they were working out together a few years ago. So you've got Jaylen's mom in his ear telling him one thing. You've got Tatum's mommy in his ear telling him something else, right? You think either of those African American mothers are telling these guys that they should let Porzingis shine? And that maybe the offense works really, really well when the white boy gets to be the center of it sometimes? So this is the kind of crap we're dealing with, and this is the kind of crap that Beta Brad and Beta Wick don't understand because they don't want to understand. And so now we've got Jaylen Brown knowing that he's got the franchise totally hostage if he wants to take them hostage, if he wants to sabotage it. And he's going to show how powerful he is, how destructive he can be, how wrong the Celtics were for noticing that he turns the ball over, he can't pass for shit. His team defense is terrible because his IQ is retarded on that side of the floor. His off-ball defense, when his man doesn't have the ball, is absolutely terrible. He got lit up by Gabe Vincent, his head easily distracted head-wise. And what do you think? By the time the playoffs come next year, like just like last year, nobody thinking that these guys might be sick of each other by the time the playoffs come because it's not built properly, because nobody's following Smart and everybody knows that no matter how hard they try, he's just going to blow the game at the end. I mean, these guys had to be shamed into not getting swept by the Miami Heat. They had to get absolutely shamed just to put up an effort to win even one game. Because they just wanted to go home. They wanted to get swept. So they could get away from each other, guys. $300 million for one of these guys who wanted to get away from each other and get swept in the Eastern Conference Finals, who did not want to go to the finals. So on the positive side, like, the Celtics are now injury resistant to some extent, but you know, superior depth and better balanced roster would no, it's pretty well balanced right now, but this just isn't a guy you allocate 35% of your cap to. Like, you've got this guy he's not even based in reality. Right? He thinks he's a genius. He thinks he's way smarter than he is. He thinks he's way better than he is. He thinks his faults aren't even there. Like, he thinks like black people built the pyramids. He thinks they were the Hebrews. He thinks, you know, he thinks like blacks probably the best at math. Like, he probably thinks all kinds of crazy stuff. And he's pretty clearly racist against white people. All these guys are. We saw it with the BLM stuff. That's why I stopped watching the game. They're not trying to hear about facts. And with the competitive hunter-gathering thing, like, jealousy is a key component of all of that. Jealousy drives all of that. Jealousy is hardwired. You know, over thousands of years, you would imagine that people who were less jealous were less motivated. So it's just crazy how much of human behavior is actually just biology and zoology. Like, we give ourselves way too much credit, you know? Thinking that everything has some, you know, Marxist authored sociological explanation for everything, right? There's a bullshit sociological explanation for everything. You know, you look at Kobe, you look at Michael Jordan, like, I guess Magic was kind of pretty team-oriented, but he also couldn't shoot, so, you know, and he was a con artist the whole time. You know, like Larry Bird and those Celtics being able to compromise and share and keep the focus on the goal, like, pass the ball around for the best shot, like you hear the announcers like gush every time the Celtics like actually do the right thing. Like, you think Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are trying to get the best shot next year? You don't think that'll feel like, oh, I'm just sacrificing so much. It's just so hard, but I try to do it. Oh, winning is just so hard. I have to sacrifice so much. You know, remember Pierce and Garnett and Ray Allen? They weren't ready to play any. You know what? 30 years old, right? And you've got Brown, who's 27 now, and Tatum, who's 26. Like, it's not really rocket science. Like, we pretty much know. Jaylen's still going to have a big grudge. He's still going to be consumed with... I bet this guy, Jaylen, has dreams. He wakes up all the time from dreams where Jason Tatum just hit a big shot, or Jason Tatum is, got a big media scrum around him, and Jaylen Brown is over in the locker room by himself, and he wakes up in a cold sweat like, oh, it's just a dream. It's just a dream. It's just a dream. That's how bad it is, guys. And then who's the coach? Like, who wins almost every NBA championship? What kind of coach do they have? It's almost always like Ime had a great team and he did a great job as a coach, and it was a whole Wakanda vibe, like, let's do it for Wakanda, let's play together for Wakanda. And then he couldn't keep his dick in his pants with the snow bunnies around. He couldn't be a professional coach for 4 months without showing that he's just an overgrown boy. So I think it's pretty clear that Porzingis is the second best player on this team. And I think he's closer to Tatum than people might want to think. Tatum still has the edge, though, but, Porzingis, he just had to grow into his body, and he had to mature as a person, too. And, look at Porzingis signing that extension for $30 million a year coming off the season he had, and then we're paying Jaylen Brown twice as much. And you think Jaylen Brown's going to sacrifice even one field goal attempt per game to a white guy who Jaylen Brown hates, the entire race? And you think he's going to take less shots to let some white boy get the attention and hearing all the debates of who's better, Jaylen Brown or Kristaps Porzingis? One thing about Porzingis too is I think that Luka Doncic playing so well in a selfless style has really been a great thing for Porzingis, and I think even more this year than ever he's going to enjoy the facilitator role more, but that's going to require him having the ball, and that's not something that the Jays are going to want to do no matter how good it is for the team. And you've got this dumb young coach who's only got the job because he's black. And then they bring in 2 more black assistant coaches because Lord knows that when we fire this coach in the middle of the season, it's got to be another black guy, or Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum will throw a temper tantrum, but especially Jaylen Brown. We just let a jealous, racist diva hold the franchise hostage, and we're just going to cross our fingers and hope he doesn't fuck us in the ass, which is what they really want secretly anyway, guys. That's what they really want. And to call us racist on the way out the door. Like Kyrie did. You didn't even really hear Celtics fans challenge Kyrie when he called the city racist after he left. And they won't do it with Jaylen Brown either. Remember Jaylen Brown when he was in London in 2019 for a game against the 76ers? To the London press, The Guardian, he made up this bullshit claim that when he was in high school, white people used to throw bananas on the court, and they used to dress up as monkeys and make monkey sounds. Jaylen Brown playing in front of huge crowds every single game with a baseline full of cameras because everyone wanted to capture his next dunk for the Ball in Life highlight reel. Ball is Life highlight reel. Jaylen Brown never said anything about the white guys dressing up as monkeys and throwing bananas on the court, and nobody in the stands ever noticed anything like that in any of those games, and none of the cameras captured any of this or even any rumor of this. I remember 2019 when Jaylen made these accusations. That was before Jussie Smollett, so that was back when everyone could get away with this kind of stuff. You don't think he's going to do it again? He already did it in the middle of the season last year. Interview with the New York Times, he claimed that it was racist that Bostonians didn't go to his juice store more, right? This mega millionaire making $25, $30 million a year felt entitled to Bostonians, middle class and working class Bostonians, spending their hard-earned money at his store just because he's black and just because he's on the Celtics. And that it's racist for them not to do that. Whatever, at least we got Porzingis. It'd be nice to have, like trying to trade Jaylen for Josh Giddey or something would have been pretty fun. Another guy who would have been worth it would be DeAndre Ayton, to go with a super big lineup and maybe get a pick from the Suns, because, that foursome would absolutely self-destruct, right? Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and Jaylen Brown. That would be a disaster. But, ultimately, Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart and Jason Tatum, they learned how to be an NBA star, NBA player from Kyrie Irving. Fuck the franchise and the fans in the mouth as forcefully and repeatedly as possible, and they will beg for more. Guys, I'll see you later.